A lady I went to high school with has preserved something I put on Facebook a long time ago. She thinks that stuff I say just is so intelligent, and I got to tell you, I'm a total sucker for that. If some lady thinks that what I say makes a contribution, my day is made. So here it is. I call it the second way. When I was a teenager, I saw the movie Premature Burial starring Ray Milland at the Benton Theater downtown Kennewick. I remember saying to my friends, if that happened to me, I'd have two choices. I could do what he did, panic and claw at the top of the coffin, run out of air, and die quickly. Or I could stay calm and remind myself that this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience and be conscious to everything happening until the end. I want to prepare myself to be able to choose the second way. Now, there have been times as an adult where I will realize that I've had an experience that is preparing me for that second way of dealing with being buried alive. And I am astounded that a 15 or 16-year-old could have so perceptively mapped out a life quest. I'm 66 now, and looking back at those astonishing moments are coming more often. Jane Kenyon was dying of cancer, and she wrote a poem, Let Evening Come, and I've altered it to express one of the paths that I believe will find the second way. Let the light of late afternoon shine through chinks of the barn, moving up the bales as the sun moves down. Let the cricket take up chafing as a woman takes up her needles and her yarn. Let evening come. Let dew collect on the hoe abandoned in long grass. Let the stars appear and the moon disclose her silver horn. Let the fox go back to its sandy den. Let the wind die down. Let the shed go black inside. Let evening come. To the bottle in the ditch, to the scoop in the oats, to the air in the lung, let evening come. Let it come as it will, and do not be afraid, for God is there in the letting go. So let evening come. The man buried alive in the coffin will find God in the letting go, not in the clawing out. God can be experienced the second way, and not in the frantic prayers of deliverance. That is the first way. Rilke has a poem that when I read it the first time, it had me say, "That's it." Sometimes a man stands up during supper and walks outdoors and keeps on walking because of a church that stands somewhere in the east, and his children say blessings on him as if he were dead. And another man who remains inside his own house dies there inside the dishes and in the glasses, so that his children have to go far out into the world toward that same church in the east which he forgot. Now, what I see in this poem, in the middle of a normal life, in the middle of important responsibilities, sometimes a person cannot remain there and must, for ineffable reasons, start walking toward a destination, which destination he does not know. Having left normal behavior, his family can relate only to who he used to be and praises what he used to do and used to be. Another person never gets or never heeds such a call, so her life remains in the lawn mowing, in the drive to work, in the evenings at home, in the understandable, in the tactile and tangible, and her children have to do the same. They start walking for unexplained destinations, or they plant a lawn and get a car loan. In another place, Rilke said, "We are not to know why this and that masters us. Life makes no reply, only that it enraptures us, makes us familiar with it." Rilke's poem was paraphrased by a 15-year-old girl who went to get an abortion. Sometimes a woman stands up during her pregnancy and goes to the clinic and walks out a few hours later because of a future that stands somewhere in her own mind, and her parents and her boyfriend curse her as if she were dead. Another woman has her baby, and lives there inside the diapers and the days of babysitting so that her boyfriend can go out into the world toward a future she had to forget. That interpretation is an excellent interpretation, but it displays something that the original is all about: concreteness versus ineffability. The girl's vision of her possible future and her determination to have a say in it are more concrete than her vision will be at age 40 or 50, when she will not be content with a good marriage and a good job and good kids, and she forsakes them all to follow a path that she cannot justify to others. So I feel at odds with concreteness. In about 1990, my wife and her friends discovered the book Please Understand Me, the Myers-Briggs Personality Typing. They sat around a pool in North Richland watching their kids swim and discussing their personality types. Jackie's friends laughed at her type. ISFJ was described as making for good teachers, good secretaries, and what do you know? She taught secretarial skills. So I took the test and I read my type, ENTP, and I was bowled over. Nobody had pegged me like that description. Among other things, it said that ENTPs hate routine and practice, and they love to get into situations that require them to improvise, the consequences of which is to put them and their families in physical and financial danger. Exactly. 1 week before reading this, I had rented a 30-foot racing sloop after one stinging sailing lesson on a 14-foot boat. So when I got out on the Columbia River and putted around for hours with a little outboard, finally the wind came up, I ran up the sails and that sucker began to fly. Well, and it began to heel over because it was a gale. Andrew was about 5, Amanda was about 7, and they began to scream and cling to their mama, who was 7 months pregnant, and she's manning the tiller. I'm trying to get the mainsail back down, and I'm yelling at her to steer into the wind so the sail would go slack so I could get it down, and she's yelling back at me that she's damned if she's going to sit with her neck craned back, looking up at the wind gauge at the top of the mast. Now, if I had dumped that boat in the river, Jackie might have miscarried at 7 months, the kids were in danger, and if the boat sank, it was about $30,000. ENTPs hate routine and practice and love to get into situations that require them to improvise. So after being so perfectly pegged by that book, I was curious if it was sort of like Chinese horoscope. They would all sound like me, but in different ways. So I read Jackie's type to check that out and understand her needs better. And my reaction was, why in hell would anyone want to be like that? Now I'm ashamed of that reaction. And I can see now that the reaction was normal. Everyone's reaction to a different personality type is, why do they choose to be like that? Well, the whole point of the book is we don't choose. Jackie does not choose to be like that, and she cannot choose to be something else. And she quite naturally wonders, but she had a better upbringing than I did, and so she never actually said it, why in hell would anyone want to live their life like Nathan does? She does, in fact, constantly ask why in hell the son who's most like me would want to be the way he is. So let's look again at how I analyze the second paragraph of Rilke's poem. Another person never gets or never heeds such a call to a church in the East, and so her life remains in the lawn mowing, in the drive to work, in the evenings at home, in the understandable, in the tactile and tangible. That analysis by me comes from my primitive reaction, why in hell would someone choose that? Well, maybe a better analysis is, she feels called to keep the lawn mowed, to keep dinners on the table, so that the first guy can get up and walk away from it all, despite everything in her heart that has her wanting something else than lawn mowing and rides to work. Something that calls her to a quiet life in a solo apartment, lying on the bed in the sunlight, nibbling M&Ms with peanuts and reading romance novels and drinking Tab. Despite the powerful call to that, she stays the course. And after so many years of demanding good grades and the next Scout merit badge and curfews and church attendance, Her pink-haired boy arises from supper one night, and he goes outside and he keeps walking to a distant church in the east. So one area of my life where concreteness and yearning for ineffability collides is with my family. Many of them are very concrete thinkers. I think many of them are Myers-Briggs SJs. So another area of concreteness and ineffability is discussed in James Fowler's Stages of Faith. The idea of the book is that regardless of what we believe, how we believe it goes through the same developmental stages. So Mormons, Muslims, and Methodists in stage 3 say the same things about their faith, they just use different jargon. So in stage 5 now they say the same things about their faith, but they now start to use each other's jargon. Fowler lists a spectrum of ways in which we manifest these faith stages, and the interesting one for me is how we use symbols. Folks in stage 3 see their symbols as having magical, literal powers. Stage 3 Mormons believe that their temple underwear will protect them from natural evils, bullets, disease, trauma. Stage 3 Methodists believe that if they are performing God's work, FARC guerrillas in Colombia will not kidnap them. CIA-directed Peruvian fighter pilots will not shoot their airplane down. Stage 3 Americans will beat you to death if you burn their flag. Stage 3 Catholics won't chew the host because they were taught it literally is the flesh of Christ. All of that is very concrete. In stage 4, people see symbols merely as material intellectual representations or reminders of spiritual truths. But in stage 5, people see symbols as having potential to have mystical power, not magical, mystical. The potential of the symbol is given power by the person. And Fowler calls that voluntary naivete, where the believer imbues and knows that she does imbue the symbol with powers greater than its material properties. So a person in stage 3 takes the sacrament believing it is literally the blood and flesh of Christ, or believing that the bread and wine have magical properties. The person in stage 5 sees in the sacrament a parade of saints from the present all the way back through the Dark Ages, through the catacombs in Rome, through the caves above the Nile, through the homes in Corinth, Greece. And she creates for herself a mystical union with all those pleading saints and a union with that body of Christ by eating it and eating with the body of Christ. There were 2 other folks not fond of concreteness. Voltaire. Doubt is an uncomfortable condition, but certainty is a ridiculous one. Mary Gauthier said, "Now it is hard to discern the truth, so we live with points of view."